Heather Stone is the founder of Stone Insurance. She's a passionate advocate for affordable healthcare solutions for all, drawing on her own experience as a mother of a disabled child. Heather has worked tirelessly to bridge the gap in insurance and care opportunities for differently abled children, including those with autism. And Heather joins us now. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm brilliant, thanks, and it's great to have you here. So what was your journey into starting Stone Insurance?
I actually decided to start Stone Insurance on accident. My son was disabled. He was 3 years old when he had a childhood stroke, and I already had a financial advising license. But due to his condition, we were in the hospital for over 4.5 months. This was kind of pre-Obamacare and affordable health care reform. So I connected with some other moms, and the consensus was that everybody was not just worried about their child, but how they were going to pay for their bills, how are they going to navigate the social services system. And I just took it by the horns, and we've been doing it for now 20 years.
Yeah, because I guess the thing is, a health disaster, so to speak, comes as a shock. Nobody's predicting it most of the time. So something like a stroke in a child, which must be so rare, how did that affect you, both emotionally and financially?
So financially, I was told that by social services that I should not work. I should make as little money as possible, and I should give any career aspirations that I have up, because in order for my son to get medical care at the time, the only way we were going to be able to obtain that is if we were very low on income and had the state give us care. Yeah. So I kind of maneuvered that for a little bit and tried to find a way to beat it and get around the system. And I decided I was going to learn the industry and the ins and outs, so I can not just do what's best for my son to get him the best medical care, but to teach other families going through the same thing as well. And then wrote a book about it 20 years later.
Yeah. Is it kind of a broken system where you seem to be better off if you have less money, which most things don't work that way?
Most things that do not work that way. And healthcare in America has come a really long way. But back then it was in shambles, and it didn't matter what you had. If you became ill in any capacity, you were pretty much losing your assets and any ability to get insurance long term.
So how's your experience as a parent of a disabled child influenced your work in the insurance industry? I guess it's given you the reason to begin, but does it make you empathise with your clients?
Yes. So I have a division of my agency that only works with special needs parents. We do the public insurance as well, Medicaid, Medicare, and anybody else who kind of needs this. We do have a division that I lead that is really focused on special needs parents. We help them navigate the healthcare system and some financial planning as well, and give them some tools and tricks to have long-term goals that are easy to achieve for them, because our community unfortunately doesn't have a lot of funds because of the ability to work as well.
And you're also an advocate for special needs children, tirelessly advocating for them.
I am, yes.
Have you had any challenges along the way?
For sure. And the reason that I decided to write my book, Invisible Parents, was I got to a point with my son when he was a teenager. I had my son, and they also fostered another special needs teenager as well, that I was no longer able to provide the supports that he needed to continue to live in my home. So we had to make a very difficult decision to place him into a group home or assisted living. And at the time, the special needs community definitely shunned me for it, was very upset, and felt like I was, giving my son up. And actually what I did for not just my son, but also for myself, was give him the freedom to learn to live independently. So the group home that he lives in now, he has, I might as well have put him in a frat house. He has really good friends that are, within the same age group of him. He's learning to live independently. He has a girlfriend. He has attention on him all the time. And the behaviors, we did get to a point where we just could no longer provide the services. And now, he's been in a couple of years, and I do have parents coming to me, the same ones that judged me, saying, okay, this is time for me now. How did you accomplish this? So it's a journey for sure.
That's quite impressive. And are there any kind of misconceptions about children or just people in general with ADHD?
Yes, it's so my son has autism. There's a lot of misconceptions. The spectrum is very large. When I tell people usually that my son has autism, they'll say, "Oh, wow, does he like dinosaurs?" I'm like, no, absolutely not. But he does have low intellectual disability. A lot of, and I think it's 16 to 18% of children have aggressive behaviors and self-harm as well. And that is really who, my book is focused on, and the community I would like to focus on right now, because that they don't have an advocate. The children's have advocates, there are services for the children, but there's really nobody that kind of sticks up for the parents that are going through this. A lot of parents do have a lot of trauma. There are some kids that, when they can't communicate what they want, they go to violence. That means that, we're hitting mom and we're constantly repeating ourselves, or we're doing property destruction. And my goal is to kind of shed a light on that to get some political change to happen.
Do you think that results in a kind of stigma for people on the spectrum? Because it's so large that sometimes they can all be grouped in together with some negative things.
Yeah, it's, in my opinion, it's too large. I've been doing this for now 20 years. My son has been diagnosed 3 or 4 different things because our language keeps changing. But there's a huge difference between now it's levels. But there's, the Asperger side is usually, they have their own social issues, and sometimes they can have, a very high IQ, and they're able to get a driver's license and have a job at like IBM and live independently. And then you have the other side that, sometimes these kids are nonverbal. They're not able to even go to the bathroom. Their intelligence level is very low. So labeling both sides of the spectrum the same thing really confuses the masses.
Yeah. Is there an issue with labeling in general? Because some people may feel, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but some people may feel that these people are just bad behaved, or whatever issues may be a symptom of it as well, and they don't really have a condition, it's just who they are. And I suppose even if you don't have autism or ADHD, you will do things sometimes that they would do, if you see what I mean. So how do you know what is caused by the autism or ADHD or Asperger's and what is not?
So that's a very clinical question. Unfortunately, I mean, there's labels now for everything. With the group that I focus on is that low IQ, under 70 IQ type of autism, where there's intellectual disabilities. So I guess that is now the appropriate word, the intellectual disabilities, where ADHD and Asperger's usually do not have intellectual disabilities.
So what's the best way you would describe health insurance in general to somebody with ADHD or autism who maybe has an intellectual disability?
With the intellectual disabled community, they really need to be on Medicaid, because and that's what I teach parents as well, is it gives you the ability to get services. Sometimes they need home health care. Sometimes they need like a personal care attendant that's going to come and help mom, be able to go to the grocery store or do whatever they need to do. And then the other side of it too is they can potentially live independently with supports from the state if they have the appropriate services. Most states have what's called a med waiver service. And in my book, I really address that on how important it is to sign up for those when a child becomes diagnosed with intellectual disability at age 3 or 4, because sometimes the wait list can be 10 to 15, in some states, 20 years.
Wow.
And we don't realize we're in a crisis, a lot of times, especially when you have aggressive children, until they're 14, 15, 16, and then things kind of get out of control. So when we're starting the application process at that age, and then you hear, there's a 5, 6, 7 year waiting list, mom and dad just usually give up. So I am a firm believer, the minute you get diagnosed with any type of intellectual disability, get on that waiting list, even if you don't need it. I'd rather you be on it and never need it.
That's so surprising that it's so long. Why is it so long, do you think? I mean, is it just underfunded and under-resourced? Because any kind of physical health issue, you'd get a diagnosis as soon as possible to try and make sure you got it.
Yeah, so it's going to depend on the state. So here in the U.S., we have every state is governed different. And I live in the state of Florida. Florida does not have, we do not have state income tax. So there's not a lot of funds there to go to more of human services. Where if you lived in like a Michigan or California or Pennsylvania, they have state taxes. So their wait lists are a little bit shorter.
And even in the UK, I mean, I'm just making this up really anecdotally, but I think the waiting list is about a year. there, which is still pretty high, but it's a huge discrepancy between the US and here, I'd say.
Yes, the US healthcare system is very different. I've been trying to change it half my life.
Yeah.
So...
And how have you balanced your role trying to change the healthcare system and being an insurance professional with being a mother and being a special needs advocate?
I think that sometimes you're just born to do things. And I was not born to do this. However, my son, for sure, has taught me the lessons that I needed to see that is, wrong with our healthcare system. It's wrong with our country. That's wrong with, a lot of the services that are out there. So, that may have been his whatever, whatever it is. But the minute that he got diagnosed and this thing started to happen, it's been like a fire that I just can't get out of me. Even in my book, there's 12 or 13 different families that we focus on, because the stories of the parents are never heard. It's always, the stories of the child or what we can do to fix the child. And you can't, but you can, the parents need to start focusing kind of on themselves and taking a look back and realizing that there is some trauma that goes along with this, and mental health is important, and try to find some solutions that we can control.
Yeah. And how do you stay up to date with the latest developments in healthcare and insurance policies? Because maybe some of the stuff you've been fighting for finally happens. You've got to stay in touch.
Well, as a professional, I have my CE credits, but I'm also a representative for the state of Florida on some CMS boards, which is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. I go to DC quite often and go to their conferences on anything that is going to change on the federal level. And I'm also very involved on the state level of services that are changing, or people that are trying to make change. There's some rally days, and I have no problem walking into a politician's office and spilling the beans. Doesn't mean they listen, but they're going to understand, the voices, at least, from the people who can't speak for themselves.
What's the difference between federal and state level, out of interest? I mean, do they have different health powers and you go to different ones to campaign about different things?
Yes, welcome to America. So we have the federal laws of the entire country, from California to Maine to Florida. It's kind of all the same thing. But then every single state has its own, what's called Medicaid laws. And those Medicaid laws and Medicaid funding are dependent on each state. It's not all the same.
Yeah.
So it's not just our country, it's our country and then the state. So you have to really make sure you live in the right spot if you have a child that has a disability.
Yeah, that's confusing. But then even in the UK, we have the overall government, and then Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland get their own pretend governments. And England just has to have the UK government. They don't get a devolved one.
Yeah.
So that's confusing, I guess.
It's a lot.
Based on your experience, what advice would you give to parents of special needs children who are struggling both as a parent and with the health system?
Definitely, I would say it's a lot easier to plan in small chunks than it is to, a lot of parents just lay in bed at night wondering what's going to happen when I die, what's going to happen with, the next doctor's appointment. And there's just so much worry and concern that if you just take, even if it's 30 minutes a month to say, okay, this is my long-term goal. This is how I'm going to get here. I'm going to start investing $20 a month in a life insurance policy or an ABLE account or something. Small steps help the stress of the unknown very much. And then also, our community's divorce rate is so incredibly high. A lot of these women, a lot of the parents are single moms, and they don't allow themselves to kind of be their own person. I've known a lot of them will, take on the disability of their child and, say, I can't hang out with my friends. I can't have a relationship. I can't do all these things. And, it's self-care is really important. Other relationships are very important. And, that is, something I always try to drive home is, give yourself, even if it's an hour a day, time to just focus on you.
Yeah. Well, what are your future goals for Stone Insurance and Invisible Parent? And all your advocacy work?
So Invisible Parents comes out on April 1st. Right now, it is a pre-order on Amazon. It is $9.99. And then the hard copies and the book launch will be on April 1st. So my goal for the book is really to get that story out to parents who are kind of too afraid to admit that, they sit in a house where a couple times a month their child, is very violent, and it hurts, and it does emotionally impact us, because that is very pushed under the rug. Nobody likes to talk about it, but it's very real. And I would like to get the book. The book isn't just about my story; it's about many families, and I would like to get that in the hands of as many political figures as I can, because we definitely need political change. These families do need mental health care. They unfortunately are going to be in poverty for the rest of their lives, and it's just generational poverty. So I would like to get a bill and get some political change to get some financial assistance and some mental health care for parents that have special needs children.
You picked the perfect day to release the book. Do you think people are going to take you seriously?
I don't know. As soon as I pushed the button, I was like, yeah, that probably wasn't the best day.
Well, where will we be able to find your book and find Stone Insurance and everything that you'd want us to find?
So right now the book is pre-order on Amazon. If you just put in Invisible Parents, and the author is me, Heather Stone, and then Tim Agnew, it was my co-writer. He's been wonderful. You can pre-order that book immediately. And then the website will be coming up shortly. And then my business and my business site and everything about us is going to be in the book as well.
Excellent. Well, many thanks for talking to us today. It's been great having you on.
Thank you so much.